When my work is finished, I'm coming back for you.
Hello, my little chickadees. I appear to have another podcast.
Yeah, I do wonder, Adam. I do wonder. I mean, I've seen the amount of podcasts that you actually do, and A, I don't understand how you have the time, and B, I don't understand how you have the sanity, assuming
Not
you
anymore.
do.
I retired.
You retired. Obviously you can't see because this is a podcast and not a video, but I'm doing the inverted commas.
There's a technical term for it from the world of wrestling. He did a Ric Flair. He retired.
Retired.
Which would explain a lot. I've seen you elbow drop a lot of jackets.
Does it explain the masses of steroids that you keep finding in drawers?
No, it explains that as he gets older, he just cries at the drop of a hat.
It's true. I saw a baked potato today, and the tears just came. They just...
Yeah, well, to be fair, there is something inherently tragic about a baked potato.
You were once alive.
Not a mashed potato, but a baked one, certainly.
Man alive.
You are not mashed. Why? I cannot mash you because I am horribly allergic to the milk. I cannot put butter
This
in
is
you.
a very, very odd way to start off a Games Workshop podcast, I must say.
That's a good point. Yeah, Games Workshop.
I did not expect it to descend into potato talk.
Welcome to Potato Hammer.
That would be fantastic.
Welcome to Potato
wouldn't it?
Hammer, where we've replaced all of your miniatures with potatoes in order to make sure it's a bit cheaper. If you look over here...
I love the idea. You could get like different types of potato having different rules. So like the Maris Piper would be very different from all the others. That would be the Dreadnought, wouldn't it? The Maris Piper. That would have to be the Dreadnought of potatoes.
As you can see here, I've got a potato. I put 2 sticks underneath it for legs. This is my killer can.
See, you say that.
That would have to be a Maris Piper. Big, durable. Good baking potatoes.
So, with that being said, welcome to the FLUFFENHAMMER.
Yes, apparently.
3 minutes in, and we're going to get to the explanations. So, What is the FLUFFENHAMMER? The FLUFFENHAMMER is going to be a semi-regular podcast, which is going to be looking at the fluff, the worlds, the characters, and the fiction behind Games Workshop's worlds. Now, possibly every now and again, we're going to bounce off into other places and things. I think D&D might get an episode down the line, something like that. I think
so.
But most of the time...
I think that's a great idea.
Oh yeah, I think do little specials on different things as we go. I think it'll be quite a lot of fun. But mostly it's going to be set within the world of Games Workshop.
Wonderful. Mostly
because there is 30 plus years worth of universe building in 40K.
Absolutely.
There was 30 years of universe building in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and Warhammer Age of Sigmar is starting to kick along quite nicely. So there's plenty of us to talk about.
Quite frankly, if we don't spiral off into anything, we could probably do this podcast until we die and beyond.
Oh god, yeah! Allow me to bring up the Fimmer, and you'll understand. I think the Fimmer is one of those things where we're going to have an entire episode to it, just so my co-host can sit there going, "You're kidding me, right?" They actually put that in a book.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, they did. They're the Fimmer. They're interesting. Okay. How do you even begin? So, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through all these different bits and bobs. We'll talk a little bit about current events news as well, but that's not going to be the main cut and thrust of the show. So, with all that being said, I am Gruffy. I will be the host for the most part for this show, and with me each time will be one George.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to what we hope will be a very, very, very long-running series. I'm certainly up for that. I hope you are, Adam.
Oh, after 7 years of the lock-in.
No, this will be a bit of a breath of fresh air, at least for a little while, until we get on to Nurgle. Then it won't be a breath of fresh air at all, will it? At all. I mean, really, to do that, if we're going to do an episode on that, we're going to have to, not wash for a couple of months or something. Just to get the right atmosphere going. And make sure we all have colds. We've all got to have colds and be, snotting everywhere to do that. I mean, if you're really if you really want to do it legitimately, you're going to have to make sure you've got some sort of stomach upset. So eat something mouldy or out of date.
Oh, God.
That would be fantastic. Very legitimate. Very legitimate way of doing Nurgle, I think. Actually, now that I think about it, that brings up some very, very interesting potentials for doing Slaanesh, but I don't think we'll go there.
I was thinking there, the Fluffenhammer, a podcast and performance art.
Well, we'll see where it goes, eh?
We also, each week, will have a third empty chair that we will fill with somebody. I'm the person that we have to fill the chair this week. This episode is somebody I hope is going to reappear on a fairly regular basis, and that is the Lord and Master, the General for Life for the Old Oil House. My replacement is Mr. Stew.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Stew, and how are you?
I'm alright.
On your throne over there.
No, I'm pretty good. I've had a pretty chilled day, ready to do the do, and
like Betty Boo.
No.
Again, descending into sort of Slaaneshi territory. It's so bizarre. I don't know whether it's me. I don't know whether it's my mind and the way it works, but it seems to be happening a lot this evening.
No, I think it's just you, George.
I think it probably
it's
is.
Just you. You just have this aura of Slaanesh about.
I do, and I'm quite happy about it. It's the aura of acquiescence, isn't it? I believe that's what it's called. Yeah.
I've just had a fantastic thought.
Uh-oh.
When we do each Chaos God, we'll just do the Chaos God and the Chaos Power itself a episode, right?
Fabulous.
So three people will just go back and forth and talk about the power, the cult, the history of the power itself, the god. So each one gets its name. Slaaneshes will be called Tits and Tentacles.
So essentially hentai. That's what we're going to be calling it, yeah. So that would be a great idea, because then we would get in loads of people who are mistaking what this podcast is about. That would be fabulous.
I'm loving the idea of changing the meme to "I've played enough Slaanesh to know where this is going."
Absolutely brilliant, yeah. It's going to get very Legend of the Overfiend around these parts, I imagine, at some point.
Oh no! Right, moving on quickly.
On.
Yeah. So I've got a question.
Can I go back to Welcome to Kimmy now? I'm scared.
Yeah. I'm not terribly surprised, to be honest. It probably is going to get quite scary at times around here.
Consider the fact that my other podcast that I'm doing at the moment is all about the darker sides of human history and mythology. This got dark
pretty quickly. I do apologise for that. I do think that's probably my influence, to be perfectly honest.
Oh, you monster.
I can't help it.
Right.
I can't
so
help
I've got a question. I've got a question to go through for everybody before we get started.
Okie dokie.
And that question is going to be, how did you get started in the worlds of Games Workshop? Where has the worlds taken you? Give us an overview of your history. We'll start with George at the moment. And then we'll go to me, then we'll hear from Stu as he's the guest and gets the highest throne.
Ah, fair enough. Absolutely fair enough. The Blood God's throne, that would be Stu. That's the highest in the realm of chaos. The throne of skulls.
Bring me some skulls.
Lovely, lovely stuff. I'm okay on the Jade throne down here in Slaanesh's palace, quite frankly. How did I started? Actually, quite a lot of people of my generation, I think. My first exposure was Hero Quest and Space Crusade, which were boxed board games that were released by Games Workshop in conjunction with Milton Bradley, which was a masterstroke, absolute masterstroke by the company. Because at that time, I mean, this was pre-internet days, this was the sort of late 1980s, early 1990s, it was actually a very niche hobby back then. It was very, very difficult to get into it. I mean, the only way, really, was if you happened to wander past a magazine rack in a store and you saw a white dwarf or something and it caught your eye, or you happened to wander past an actual Games Workshop and something in the window caught your eye and you wandered in. That was basically it. That was all the marketing they had. So in conjunction with Milton Bradley, which is a huge board game distributor at the time, they released these two games which were sort of like gateway drugs, if you like, into the wider hobby. Hero Quest even had, I mean, they both even had, do you remember the TV adverts, guys?
Oh yes,
that was. I remember seeing that. I can't even remember how old I was. When was Hero Quest released? What year?
1989. Then again in 1992.
Right. So
with Advanced Quest.
Right. So 1989. I would have been 5. I would have been 5 years old. And I remember distinctly seeing the adverts for Hero Quest and Space Crusade and losing my mind. Just having one of those infantile fits where something really grabs your imagination and you have to have it.
Yeah.
Yep.
You have to have it. So I had Hero Quest for Christmas that year.
Before you continue, George,
yes.
Who wants to have a go at saying it? The sentence.
What? Which one? There's so many.
Oh, see,
I like
this
the
is the thing.
broadsword one myself.
Broadsword.
And the other.
Stu, do you want to have a go?
No.
Because weirdly enough, broadsword isn't the one that always stays in my mind. Broadsword. The one that stays in my mind is always Fire of Wrath.
I love that because if you rewatch the advert now, the kid is so into it.
He's loving it.
He is casting that spell, man. He's D&Ding it a bit there. He's getting right into that role. He's hurling that fireball.
He's just set his brother on fire in real life.
Yeah, he's actually going to grow up to become an arsonist, isn't he? You just know.
He's in jail.
But yeah, that was my initial exposure. But at the time, I didn't really know that those games were linked to Games Workshop as such. I saw the sort of Games Workshop logo on the side of the box, but that didn't really mean anything to me. It wasn't until a little bit later, so sort of more into the 1990s, when a friend of mine came into school and plonked down 2 issues of White Dwarf on my desk and just said, read them, you'll love it. So, and they were, I can't remember quite what issues they were, but they were the ones, one of them was, it featured the original release of the Warhammer Armies Undead book. This was back in the days when the undead were just the undead. They weren't broken up into lots of different factions and whatnot. They were just this massive polyglot thing, this mass of gothic horror. So you had vampires and mummies and werewolves and liches and skeletons and zombies and all sorts of things all together in one book. And the other one featured the release of the very first Codex Eldar for Second Ed.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was it. I read those books until they almost came apart, and on the back of those I went to one of the local, I pestered my mum and dad until they took me to one of the local Games Workshops and picked me up a miniature or two, and that was it. That was it. It's always been a fixture from that point on, and it's I'm a writer myself, and I have to say it's influenced the state of my developing imagination so significantly, so powerfully.
Oh, yes. Whenever I'm doing any kind of world building for RPGs or anything, to be honest, I use the old Warhammer Armies books as my template.
Yeah, and you can do that. I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all, because they are, although you can argue that, and it's definitely true that Games Workshop's worlds are generally grab bags of different influences. So there's Tolkien and there's Moorcock and there's all sorts of stuff. There's Lovecraft. There's all sorts of stuff just thrown together. They have evolved over time to become their own entities to a certain degree. Certainly certain aspects, like the Eldar, for example. The Eldar are so far away from what they started as. It's unreal.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, they started off as basically space elf pirates, didn't they?
That's all they were. Yeah. They were just the original 40k armies in particular were just ways of transplanting fantasy archetypes into a science fiction setting. So you had space orcs and space elves and so on and so forth. Since then, they have become so different. And the original Codex Eldar, actually, for Second Ed, was the first book that really fleshed them out, that made them so alien, that went into the notion of the Elder Paths, the mindset of the Eldar, the way they grow psychically, their materials and technology rather than building it. All of that stuff just makes them so interesting. And since then, although there have been ups and downs, and I've been out of the hobby and into the hobby for various reasons, it has remained a fixture and an obsession.
Yes, yeah. I think that's a very good way of putting it. Second Ed alone is probably where a lot of my memories come from, because it, as much as I love Rogue Trader, and I do, Rogue Trader is so stupid.
It is, and
Sherlock, what was it? Sherlock Watson, Inquisitor Sherlock Watson, or something like that. He's called
brilliance, absolute brilliance.
No, Sherlock Watson Poirot. That's his name.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah, he is. He is the first Inquisitor.
No way! I did not know that.
He is the one that, obviously Games Workshop don't bring him up anymore,
No.
but he is the first one, and he is in Rogue Trader.
They should bring him
boys.
back.
Yeah, they should bring back Cripman, damn it.
I want him back, and I want the miniature to look like Benedict Cumberbatch.
Just in this massive suit with his tiny head.
Awesome. I think that'd be great. Curly hair and all.
Yes, looking all like his Doctor Strange face.
Oh yes, that'd be awesome. I would so go for that. But you are right. Rogue, when you look back, I mean, Rogue Trader is really interesting, but when you look back at it, it's very of its time, you know, and it's still the whole franchise is still very much finding its feet. So it is clunky and it's naive and it's not quite there yet.
But it's got a lot of the sort of punk element of 2000 AD.
Yeah, so does.
I mean, Ghazghkull Thraka.
That's how you pronounce it.
It's how I've always pronounced
I
it.
have no idea how you pronounce it. I've tried many times and I've always failed, so I won't. I'll just call him Thraka.
Mag
Uruk. I can do his middle name is on Mag Uruk. Mag Uruk Thraka.
Aye. But do you know how he came about?
Wasn't he just a randomly generated warlord in one of the battle reports?
Nope.
No?
No, that's a different guy. Stu, do you have any idea where Thraka comes from?
Well, it's a dig at Margaret Thatcher.
It is.
Oh! Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
How awesome is that?
The fact they made her an orc, of all things, that's great.
It's funny because I'm literally looking at the 40k Wikipedia page and literally looking at orcs, and then Ghazghkull got mentioned. I should probably put that page up in case I need it.
That is fabulous. I really.
But yeah, he was originally made by Andy Chambers, and as I've heard down the line, because that was before my time, he was the name was a slight dig at shit pants Maggie Thatcher.
Brilliant.
Excuse my language.
But there's loads of it in there. And we'll come to a lot of it as we go along with the show, with the episodes. But there is loads and loads of these sly little digs at things and these parodies of things, which have completely vanished.
Oh, yes. And it's gone the other way as well a little bit, hasn't it? Like, you've got characters like Fabius Bile, for example, who everybody now calls Fabulous Bill. Nobody calls him Fabius Bile. It's Fabulous Bill. I mean, to the point whereby when they eventually make a new miniature for him, which might be coming relatively soon by the looks of things, I want him to have a really big floppy hat with like a feather coming out of it, and I want him to have a pimp cane.
I'll tell you what, somewhere in my bits box I have about 3 big floppy hats with feathers coming out of it, because I was chopping them off the old Mordheim sets.
Oh boy.
You need a Fabius Bile miniature to stick it on.
Well, I was going to say, I'll send you them if you want.
Oh, fabulous, yes. Because although I do want a serious Fabius Bile, I would also like a Fabulous Bill to go with him.
Yeah, definitely. Just so you can like swap them over during games.
Absolutely, yes.
So, myself, I got into Games Workshop originally on one of my summers back from living in Dubai, because every summer we used to come back over to this country. And my cousin, Nicol Stephen, he was massively into it. So about 88, 89, there was this grand collection of things happening where he was much older than I was. He kind of dropped a lot of his old White Dwarfs on me after we'd played a couple of games. So we're talking issues, I think, 100 to 110, 112, something like that. So we're talking old White Dwarfs.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. And I fell in love with it, but never really played anything because Workington and Dubai, 2 places that don't have a huge amount of Games Workshop stuff.
I can imagine it probably doesn't.
And this went on until maybe about 93 or so, 92, 93, where a corner shop got White Dwarf in. I was like, oh, there's White Dwarf! There's White Dwarf! And I remember that it was a battle report that had dwarfs and elves versus goblins and orcs. And I remember that because dwarfs and elves do not merge well.
No. I mean, it's generally the case in all fantasy fiction, isn't it?
Yeah.
But in Games Workshop fiction, it's taken to the nth degree. They loathe one another.
It had the release of the Grand Theologist on the chariot with the big griffin,
which lasted for years.
Yeah. I'm just setting how long ago this was. Yeah. So good lord. And from there, Woolworth started stocking HeroQuest, and then of course Space Crusade, and then down the line Battle Masters, and then does anyone remember was it Tyrannid Attack?
I don't remember that.
Not very well.
It wasn't called Tyrannid Attack. It was called something else. but it was the same. It was like Games Workshop released a lot of standalone box sets that were their versions of the MB games. So this was a version of Space Hulk, but it was set in a Tyranid hive shit. Hive shit.
Hive Marine Scout.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, fabulous.
There was.
I imagine that's where a lot of the original background came from. Then on the Tyranid hive ships.
Yeah. Very much so. And then, of course, because the Tyranids were just coming out at that time.
I was going to say, they would have been a very developing race at that time, weren't they? Was that about the time when there was only, like, Gene Stealers, Carnifexes, and those very weird Tyranid warriors?
Yeah, the really bulbous, you can see all the internal organs, Tyranid warriors.
They've got hollow bits, haven't they? Very unusual miniatures for the time.
Love them to bits. But that's not all they had. Do not forget, they also had such things as squigs.
Yep.
Because the squigs were orcs that got done by Tyranids. And the Zoats.
Zoats, of course. The vanguard organisms as they were back then.
The ones that turned up to say, so you're about to be eaten, would you like to talk about this?
Yeah, essentially. They were designed to interact with the races that were going to be devoured, weren't they? Brilliant.
I like the idea of the modern Imperium seeing them and saying, no, we're just like carpet bombing the shit out of them.
He just saunters over. Yeah, right, mate. I hear you're about to get devoured. You want to have a little arm that rebooted and back?
I'll tell you what.
We can let some of you out. 20%? 20%? Let 20% out. Yeah. Alright, then cool.
It has got to be the most thankless task and role of any of the races in 40k, being a Zoat. I mean, just how generally xenophobic and hostile all of the races in 40k are. Can you imagine going and knocking on their door and saying, would you like, we have some literature, would you like to join our club where you'll be devoured? It would not go down well.
Have you ever thought about the Kingdom of the Hive Fleet?
Exactly. I mean, that is a thankless task, that is. I can't imagine, for example, going and knocking on doors in Medrengard or Sorciarius and that turning out well.
No, it gets worse. Imagine doing it on Necromunda.
Oh.
Knock, knock, knock. What? We're here to talk to you about the Tyranid. You don't mind. I've got a spire up here trying to kill all my buddies. I've got some kind of horrible beastie down here trying to kill all my buddies. And right now, 2 of my buddies are trying to kill all my buddies. So that's a no then. Yeah.
To be fair, that might be one of the neighbourhoods that even the Tyranids kind of avoid. We don't really want that sort in our gene pool.
I love the idea of the Tyranids like attacking a planet, all the spore mines come down, and they just take one look at it like, no.
That's fine, we can leave that. That would be the ultimate insult, wouldn't it? Can you imagine, like, seeing that, seeing the skies fill with the hive fleets and the spores and whatnot, and then them all going away? That would do a lot to your self-esteem, wouldn't it?
God. Armageddon just sits there going, right, okay,
we're really that wretched.
Our planet sucks so much, even the Tyranids don't want to eat us.
So yeah, I got into all of those games, and then moved from there into Warhammer Fantasy Battle properly. Got the full thing for my birthday, which had orcs and high elves. Sorry, goblins and high elves, which I think was second.
I think that was second, Ed, yeah.
With that, I also gained all of my cousin's stuff. So, like, I had the original Warhammer Armies book, which had all the stuff like the Chaos Dwarf Boar Centaurs and their Juggernaut machines and the War Mammoths.
Fabulous.
The Zoats, the Fimai, what the hell they got? The Vododrai or something like that. The Water Spirits, giant frog things that just like were elementals. The original Slan, which were frogs with swords and bows and arrows.
Yeah, the Slan, which are now part of the background more than anything, aren't they?
Yeah. So you had all of this stuff. This stuff stuck in my head, and as much as I loved Warhammer going forward, there's something about this like late '80s Warhammer which I can't ever leave alone. So much so where, back in the day I tried to make Zoats, I tried to make my own Boar Centaurs. And weirdly enough, this year I've done it.
So you've done it now, you can't really use them.
Well, I'll find ways.
Yeah, I mean, you could always use, proxy.
Yeah,
always
completely.
do that. And it's much easier now in AOS, of course, to do that. Much easier.
Oh yeah, much easier. So this went on until about 2002, where I was playing both Warhammer and 40k. And I'm not going to say that it's connected, but when the Lord of the Rings game came out, Games Workshop's entire processes seemed to be very alien to me, and I didn't enjoy it. So I stuck on with White Dwarf for a little while, but the higher prices and the inability to get my head around a lot of the rules for the games at the time, because they were getting stupidly complex.
Yeah, there was a period, wasn't there, where there was just heights of complexity, where it was actually very difficult to even put armies together.
The last thing I ever played before coming back in was Inquisitor.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. That I still don't know how that worked.
No, not really. It didn't work, to be honest with you. So we played. I came out and other things grabbed my attention, and then 2015 or so, towards the end of that, with the rumours of the Warhammer World dying. Was it 2015 Warhammer World died? That's right, isn't it?
I'm not sure.
I think so. There was all that. And it was like, that's interesting. And I'd kind of stayed with the fiction.
Yeah.
Reading the books and stuff. I mean, Stu got me The Last Church because he thought, this is something Adam will enjoy. And he was right.
Yeah, it was, that's a good one, actually, The Last Church.
Oh, it's so good.
It's not as good as The Reflection Cracked, but it's good.
Yeah.
I like that
That's
one.
a tough one to pick. Yeah, it's a tough one to pick, actually.
I do. I mean, it's just my proclivities coming out again. I really like The Reflection Cracked.
Yeah. All right. So that's not on my list for the YouTube channel.
Is it not?
I need to get that onto my list. Need to get that onto my list.
Needs to be done.
So anyhow, the Warhammer World died, and this was years of going back and forth, and I'd reread the the Conrad trilogy multiple times. Drakenfels, which is one of my favourite books of all time.
My favourite vampire in the entire mythology as well. I think he's great.
He's
a nutter.
Is he a vampire? Is he a necromancer? Is he a god? What is
he's
he?
a nutcase.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
He's a total nutcase, which I really like.
And the fact that Kim Newman did Drakenfels as a Dracula pastiche is amazing.
Which seems to be his thing.
Good.
It seems to be his thing if you read the Anno Dracula series.
Yeah, which, by the way, has Genevieve in it.
Does it? Oh, man.
Yeah, because he owns the character. He took Genevieve off to Anno Dracula.
Awesome. Brilliant.
And then when Age of Sigmar happened, I was like, that looks a bit Warcrafty. That's weird. So I got interested in it and had a look-see, and then the Gene Stealer Cult book hit, and I was like, right, I've always said there's 3 things Games Workshop need to do to get my interest again. Gene Stealer Cults, bring back the Chaos Dwarfs, hello Forge World, and it hurts me to say this, and then make Warhammer Quest again.
Well, there you go, hat-trick, all done.
And they did it. Warhammer Quest is great. Age of Sigmar, I loved a bit. I've probably at this point played more games of Age of Sigmar than I'd played of Warhammer Fantasy Battle when I was originally playing it.
That makes a lot of sense, really. I mean, because it's just easier to put together. It's easier to play.
I mean, there's been points where we've had 2 games in a night, where we've just swapped armies around, and it is so good. And since then, it has just gone right, full blown brain. This is it now. Mostly because sort of before this I was like toy collecting, and toy collecting for me seems to have been a thing that's died out a little bit.
Likewise.
This has very much come in and filled the gap that was left. The idea of painting, customizing, building, all that, plus the stuff like the new Warhammer Armies, well, the Battle Tomes books, they have very much grabbed my interest.
Best books
exactly.
they've produced for years.
The Zench book is a thing of
it's
absolute beauty.
Brilliant. I mean, it is absolutely stunning. It's got like all the feeling of the old ROC books, but it's more coherent.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
Very much so. And the Cadron Overlords is probably, from what I understand, it's actually a bit better.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I need some money. So that's a brief overview with lots of tangents about how I got into and stayed. Stu, how about yourself?
So back in I want to say 96. Typical. I had the page up ready to go and I've closed it. Back when Codex Angels of Death landed.
Yeah.
I was very much into DC Comics at the time, and I was reading Azrael. And lo and behold, my mate knows that I was reading, and he was starting to play, and he's like, there's a guy in this book I've just bought called Azrael. Is it it can't be the same guy, is it? I was like, probably not. And then I saw the book, and I was doomed for all eternity.
That was it. That's the end of that.
I was sort of interested, and I'd always sort of... I fully admit I was one of those guys that mocked him, because he was the only guy, group of friends that did it. So, we all kind of took the piss, blah, blah, we were awful people. So he kind of doubled down and dared me. He's like, well, if you think it's that stupid, why don't you try it? I was like, all right, fine, I will then. Yeah. So yeah, lo and behold, I went in, had a look around, played introductory game, and I was doomed.
Yeah, that was the end, was it?
Yeah. Sort of, went from there, did the usual starter thing of grabbed a few odds and sods, nothing serious, and then decided on an army, and then went from there, and that was second and 40k, and I ended up working for Games Workshop twice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, once not for so long because my manager was an utter asshole. Long story short, he comes up and goes, I don't think you're doing well enough to pass your probation. We're going to train you on Tuesday. I'm getting another manager and we're going to go through it together and make sure you're trained up and ready for it because I don't want you to go. All right, awesome. Tuesday comes around. All right, we're doing your probation test today.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's lovely. Yeah.
Yeah. People are pricks, which is even better because when the first manager I knew there, Steve G, came back, and they were looking to recruit more staff for Lord of the Rings, being coming up and it being a big opening. Straight away, I was like, "All right, fella, do you want a job?" And I was like, "Yeah, go on." While the other manager was still there, mouth agape, wondering what Steve had just done. he said he was part of it. He said later at one point, I'm sure he said was, "I fully admit." I hired you because I thought you could do it, but I also hired you because I wanted to piss him off.
It's a good reason.
I was like, I ain't that fussed. So yeah, I sort of hung around for a while. Even after I left the company, back when Codex Eye of Terror was released.
Oh, back in the 3.5 days.
Yeah, I left the company at that point. I was getting a better job offer elsewhere. It was better pay. So Plus, the manager it's yet again the manager. We had a different one. He was young. He was doing things which knocked me off. So I was like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. And I hung around, and I can't. When did I sort of step away? Because after a while, I stepped away. I was just like, I've had enough. I can't remember when exactly. And I came back again for a little bit, and then I stepped away, and I stayed away for the longest time. Very much because Games Workshop had suddenly become this very corporation, fuck the little guy, excuse my French, company that they were for a good while and were up until recently.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's something that's impacted on a lot of people's enjoyment of the hobby.
Sure. It kind of came to a head for me because at this point I was out. But I was still reading the books. I was still keeping a toe in and whatnot. It reached the point where it's like, oh, there's a new story about a woman who wrote a book about a space marine, not a Games Workshop space marine, but they set the entire legal team.
And actually, that book was published long before Games Workshop ever started using the term.
Yeah,
it was
shocking.
Not to go too much down this road, but the notion of Games Workshop suing anyone for copyright is absurd. It's totally absurd because
should we look at the Necron range and where that came from?
Every element is lifted from somewhere else.
Yeah, but yeah, so I sort of potted away. I kept reading the books because I like the Horus Heresy books.
Me too, man.
And they kept me, sort of with a toe in. And the worst part was my mate Andy, who has the biggest Dark Elf army in all creation. And I am willing to bet on that because nobody's got a bigger army than him, I'm sure. He did a pre-heresy army, so I kind of kept seeing awesome stuff jumping up, and then every so often there'd just be something that sort of tickled my fancy, and then there was like, oh, we're doing plastic heresy marines. It was just like, oh, that'd be nice to paint. Have a little squad of Iron Warriors. That'd be yeah. And then I got those, and then I discovered there's a store up the road that sells it for 20% discount because it's expensive in America. I pay $35 from GW, $35 for a 5-man squad of Raptors. That's not fun, but it's you just go with it. But yeah, 20% off, that's even better. And then as I was buying the stuff, they're like, oh yeah, we've got a club that meets every other Friday in place. It's like, shit, I've got to get back into this thing.
It seems to be like a common theme, though. I mean, I've spoken to so many people who have been away from the hobby or just sort of lingering on the edges for the last decade or so, maybe half a decade. Recently, there's been something. There has been a number of things that have just snared their interest again. Whether it's the supplementary codices and army books, whether it's the shift to AOS, or whether it's the boxed games they're releasing again.
I know I got invited into a group that is basically comprised of a bunch of, older gamers, and I would say a good chunk of them are people I've worked with at Games Workshop or people I know through Games Workshop, including my previous area managers, 2 of them at no less. And it's like, man, yeah, it's like from what they've been posting as well, because I've not kept up with most of these guys. It's like, yeah, they've recently got back into it, and they're enjoying themselves with it again, and it's just been this resurgence.
The whole atmosphere, isn't it? The whole atmosphere of the hobby has shifted profoundly. There's so much potential bubbling under it now. There's so much enthusiasm, and they're doing a great job of marketing it. It's inspiring. It's absolutely inspiring. I know I've been spending a lot of money. Since the Gene Stealer Cult Codex came out, really, I've been spending a lot of money per month on Games Workshop stuff.
Gene Stealer Cult, Chaos Dwarf Army, Skaven Battle Force, Lizard Men, because I'm teaching Abby to play, a small collection of Thimmer and Zotes that I've built, a fucking Disciples of Zench Force, my Iron Jaws, and the beginnings of a Ulrich-based Stormcast army.
Awesome. That's
not including Blood Bowl.
See, I'm doing pretty good in that respect. I've got a squad of Iron Warriors Marines, squad of Iron Warriors Terminators, a couple of characters, all from that first Heresy box set, and the beginnings of my Night Lord army.
Oh, the Night Lords!
Which is up to a Rhino, a 10-man.
I love the Night Lords.
Rhino, 10-man squad of Predator, and started on the first unit of Raptors.
Superb. Have you read the Night Lords trilogy from Black Library?
Oh, yes. A while ago, so I might just try and dig a copy out and get it reread as I'm going. But
they are damn good.
Yeah,
books.
no, I'm plodding along nicely. And it's the weirdest thing. This is something else that's really good about Games Workshop lately. I wouldn't have done Night Lords if it weren't for that Warhammer TV.
No. I mean, yeah, Warhammer TV is great. It really is.
Because it was like, oh, there's a really nice, easy paint scheme for doing them, and there's no mixing, because I found a lot of the time with the Tampa humidity and the air conditioning to combat it, my mixes dry up really quick. Whereas now there's my base coat, there's an ink to shade, and there's two different colours for highlights.
Yep.
That is how I'm going to be painting from now on. It's going to be base coat, shade, 2 highlights, all in pots. None of this mixing gubbins.
Simple and effective. Yeah.
And blood for the blood god. Oh, that's awesome!
Oh, it is
so good. There is not a single Night Lord's miniature that has not got some of it on them.
It's why I want to do Corn Disciples.
Oh, have you got the book?
No, not yet. It's on my.
It's really good. It's the equivalent of the Disciples of Zeech, but they've done a lot more than I thought they would in it. There's not only loads of new war scrolls and things in it, but they've got how Khorne armies can't have wizards, obviously. So there's a big chunk of support not there. Instead, they've got priests. So you've got the slaughter priests and whatnot. But the slaughter priests now have lots of different prayers to select from. Lots of different prayers that have different effects throughout the course of the game.
Okay.
And they also have the blood tithe table from the Khorne Demonkin, which is brilliant.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's stunning. They've done what they've done with the Khorne forces in AOS is they've essentially made them the classic Chaos Force.
Yep.
With the Disciples of Zeech, they've changed them almost beyond recognition.
Yeah.
They don't look like an old-style Chaos Force at all. They play differently, they look differently, and that's great. There's something completely new, completely different. But the Khorne forces are your classic, old-school Chaos Horde, with your barbarians, with your Chaos Warriors, with your Chaos Knights, and with lots of Khorne-specific stuff as well. Very, very nice indeed.
This is going to hurt me. But, yeah. So, we've basically filled up almost an episode with that.
Yeah, I think we probably have.
Oh, sorry.
And Nurgle strikes.
I keep getting these coughing fits since I decided to quit
smoking.
Yes. Will they go away ever? So what we're going to do now... So what we're going to do now is, this obviously section won't be in episodes going forward. So what we'll do now is we'll skip straight over to the news to talk about the big news of the month. And George, what is the big month?
Well, there's so much happening, but the big one this month, the big one, of course, is the new edition of Warhammer 40,000, which will be dropping, according to Scuttlebutt, rather soon.
Yes.
Current Scuttlebutt puts it towards the end of May, beginning of June. And it is one of the most dramatic shifts in dynamic that the game systems have had since, really... I'd say the transition from second ed to third ed in 40k at least. From what we've been told, from what's been drip fed into the communities, it's going to be closer to an AOS style system, but not entirely. It's going to be sort of like slightly, I suppose you could say slightly higher tier than AOS. AOS is almost like the introductory war game. Which is incredibly simple, very easy to pick up and play. You don't need much to play it. There's no real complexity to the rules. It's just a very fun, easy game to pick up and play. Warhammer 40k, it looks like it's going to have layers of complexity beyond that, which of course it needs, because the universe is slightly different. You have things like vehicles and tanks and lots more flying elements. There's a lot more in the way of shooting in a 40k game. So of course it does need something to represent all of those. But from what we've seen thus far, I am terribly, terribly excited. What it looks like is, and certainly this is what the designers have been proclaiming on Warhammer TV and whatnot, is that they have taken on board so many of the issues and complaints that people have. They have been scanning the forums, they've been listening to the podcasts, they've been watching the larger YouTube channels, the wargaming channels. They've been doing an enormous amount of market research and play testing, and they have designed the game around that input, which is terribly exciting.
It, to me, from what I've seen of it anyhow so far, is it smells like a offspring of AOS and second ed.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of rules in there to have smaller skirmish-based games, a couple of units each, but it looks like it'll go all the way up to massive Horus Heresy level.
Yep.
Which
I think that's certainly the case.
What fascinates me the most so far has been how vehicles look like they're going to work. The idea of vehicles, instead of having that ridiculous chart that they had.
Yes.
I don't care what anyone says, that chart was terrible, and one of the reasons why I never wanted to play 40k again.
Well, one of the biggest problems.
2 charts?
One of the biggest problems with the damage charts, really from I would say from third ed onwards, is that vehicles were ridiculous. You couldn't... I mean, okay, they were ridiculous in second ed as well. You couldn't really use them for what they were designed for in second ed. They were supposed to be transports by and large in second ed, but you couldn't use them like that. What you did was loaded them up with cards, like, the optional cards and weapons they could get. You loaded them up with them, and then you chucked them at the enemy and just fired everything until they died. That's what you did with vehicles in second ed. But after that, with the introduction of the vehicle damage charts in third ed, they were flimsy as all hell, and have always been flimsy as all hell. No matter what changes they've introduced down the various lines, they've just been too weak vehicles. You just have not been able to use them as they're represented in the background and the way they look. The way they look on the battlefield, you'd paint up these immense, very impressive looking Land Raiders and Falcon grav tanks and whatnot, and they would just die. They would be taken out first turn by a lucky shot with a lucky dice roll.
I have to add something here, because the worst instance I had of that, Arc Truck, chock-a-block with boys, literally first turn of the game, Big Mike, people who know Big Mike know he's got the look of the devil, steals initiative from me, takes a pot shot at one of my trucks, blows it up, but because of the Arc rules, it ramshackles its way off the board with the squad of boys inside.
So, how many points was that wasted, with actually doing nothing in the game?
With a single shot from a rocket from a missile launcher.
Well, from what I understand, from the way it looks anyway, that's impossible now. Under the new edition, that's impossible.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of people complain about stuff like, but what if a load of grots can take out a Land Raider? Somebody actually worked it out. And how many... One second, sorry. How many lucky shots, as in really good dice rolls, as in hits, right, do you think you need from grots in a single turn to kill a Land Raider? Because somebody worked it out. Does anyone want to take a guess?
No idea. I'd assume it's a significant amount.
Stu, do you want to take a guess?
Well, considering taking out how many's actually going to miss.
Yeah.
And then how many's actually going to have to... Because if what I've seen is right, every weapon can wound everything.
Yes.
But it's just ridiculously difficult to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing either it's going to be a 6, a 6 always wounds, or it's going to be like the old days of modified ballistic skill where you've got to roll a 6 and then something else to wound it.
It seems to be the way to do it. And for what I understand, it would take 326 hits.
So actually,
it is to kill a Land Raider.
It's one of those things where it's theoretically possible.
Yeah. You can do it.
It's not going to be worth it.
Yeah, exactly.
You will waste so much time and so many shots, and you have to buy so many grots to do it.
Yeah.
It would be absurd. So actually, the Land Raider is what it's supposed to be at last.
Yes.
Under the current system, a Land Raider can be taken out relatively easily. It's actually not that hard, and it can be taken out first turn. It ain't that hard, especially with things like D weapons flying around.
Which they've completely removed, I believe.
I mean, don't get me wrong, if it's going to be like a group of guys with rocket launchers, then that number of hits goes down quite dramatically. If it's like a Titan or another vehicle, once again, it just balances it out so much better.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I don't mind that, because another thing we need to take into account, we are operating in the 40k universe, so there are hyper-advanced weapons and things that can, destroy these massive, immense vehicles. There are, like, genetically enhanced alien monstrosities that can shear their way through the armor, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But it is really good to see that you will no longer be able to take out a Land Raider or even something like an Imperial Knight with a lucky dice roll.
Yeah.
Well, and then on the swing side of that, you've also got things like, when I played with Guard, I used to dread anything vaguely tough enough, like anything with an armor value getting in combat. Because you're just like, well, I can't do anything.
Yeah, you are actually screwed,
whereas,
aren't you?
Yeah, it's you're literally just waiting for them to chew through your squad and then taking the leadership test. Whereas now it feels like, it's a slim chance. It's the slimmest of slim chances. But if I pilot, theoretically, I pilot enough guardsmen into that Space Marine Dreadnought, they're going to jam his gears up with their guts.
Yeah, you've got a chance. I mean, and that makes combats more dynamic, doesn't it? You haven't got a situation where combats are just going to dredge on forever because they're pointless, because there's one side that actually cannot wound or destroy the other side. I mean, I am very pleased with all of the changes I've seen thus far, all of them.
Yeah, everything I'm hearing, speaking as a veteran who took a long break, it's a lot of it does sound really good, and the fact yes, everything's getting a shake-up, and yes, all the codexes are getting dumped off and changed.
It's
and
fine.
Kudos to Games Workshop for going, hey, you know what, if you bought them in the last 8 weeks, you've got your receipt, bring them back in the store.
That's brilliant.
It's good.
We never used to do that. That was like, oh, you just bought it, new edition's coming out in X amount of weeks, oh well.
Yep. No, it's brilliant. It's a really good
there was it's like you bought that codex just before the new one came out. Tough dates. Yeah.
But no, it's a good...
Well, we tell people, oh, this one's coming out in X amount of weeks, like, so. But yeah, there was nothing like somebody bought it and tough.
But no, I mean, another thing that's really cool about this new version of 40k, by all accounts, is that every existing miniature and every existing army are going to have their rules, at least a baseline set of rules to start off with, and they've all been designed together. So you haven't got the situation that you've had in every edition of 40k and every edition of FB before AOS. Where you've had some armies that have had full army books and whatnot upon release, and some armies that sort of dribbled in later on, and some that didn't, and then you've got this codex creep situation where you had some armies that had just way better rules than everyone else because new ideas had been come up with. You know, there's not this escalation situation. It's very, very heartening, especially for someone who, a chaos player like myself. Who's been hankering for a leveling situation for a long time, a very long time.
I think it seems to be a lot like the days of Matt Ward and the scale creep might actually be over, because if you look at Age of Sigmar as a template for what's going to happen going forward, there hasn't been scale creep at all. The Zench book, you may look at that and think, bloody hell, the stuff like the dice rule and everything like that. That gives you a lot of power, but then you realise that Zench cannot take a stand-up fight.
No, they can't.
That army cannot take a stand-up fight if you had...
They're a really cool, interesting army.
Yeah.
For my money, because they are totally dynamically opposite to what Chaos armies used to be.
Yes.
Back in Fantasy Battle. They're a massed shooting army. Never used to get that from Chaos.
No.
They are not an army that you charge across the battlefield with, because they will get hammered.
Yeah.
They will die in the dirt if you do that with them. Yeah, they're a thinking person's army. It's really fascinating. I love it.
And from what I understand of the Caradron Overlords, they are a run-and-shoot army, but they're actually really quite slow.
Right.
So it's like it's like the entire race is in the middle of changing to become this much faster army, this much faster force, but they're not quite there yet. But they've still got a lot of the strength of being a dwarf. So you get into hand-to-hand combat with them, they're going to take quite a lot of damage. But the entire army is based on shooting and running. Which is fascinating to me, because that's... So,
inbuilt weaknesses. I mean, I love that.
Yeah,
I love that, because that characterizes forces for me. It gives them a layer of character.
So it very much seems to be the way that this new 40k is going to work if we take Age of Sigmar as a template. The other thing that fascinates me is that every single miniature, every single force, every single army has everything ready to go on the moment this is going to get released.
Yep.
I congratulate you all, sirs.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, that is a fantastic way to do it. It's the way it should have been done a while ago, to be honest.
How much longer development time do you think they've done just for that?
Well, according to the videos that the designers have been live streaming over Facebook and whatnot, they not only but loads of staff that have been recruited specifically for that purpose, playtesters and whatnot, it's tens of hundreds of hours they put into playtesting every unit, every army, which is fantastic. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic, because that never used to happen.
No.
Yeah, it's funny, because I remember when the CEO changed recently, and a lot of the as you said earlier, the scuttlebutt was, this guy's more of a gamer, less of a money man. I think that really shows.
Well, he's actually a fan, by all accounts. Unlike the previous CEO, he's actually a fan of the games and the universe. It seems an obvious thing to have in charge, but there you go.
But you kind of look at it like with the last guy, it would have been, is the new edition ready? Well, we need to balance all the armies out. Get it out. I want money. Whereas this one's been like, no, from day one, we need to have everybody ready to go to enjoy the game.
It's going to
be... don't care how much extra it costs.
Sorry, Adam, go on.
The moment I fell in love with the guy, I can't remember his name, I know he's Australian, but I cannot remember his name. The moment I fell in love with him was when Gilliman got leaked. Because the video that Warhammer TV put out, it was a market genius. It was absolute brilliance.
Was that the one with him in the bin? Because that was Magnus.
That was Magnus. No, the one I'm talking about is you've got Duncan sitting there painting, and he's just talking about painting, and then the guy comes in and just goes, "Who are you talking to? The cameras aren't on." He's went, "I know." He's just painting away. It's like, right, well, here's the new White Dwarf. Don't tell anyone about what's in it. And he throws it over, and it's the one that's got Gilliman on.
Yeah.
And so Duncan just picks him and goes, "All right, what's the internet?"
It's everything I've seen Warhammer TV has just been great.
Duncan's fantastic.
They've done, not only am I learning a new way to paint, which I'm happier with, works so much better for me. There's that comedy element to it. It's like, we're in this bin here because people have been rooting through bins when they shouldn't have been.
Yeah. And he pulls
when Magnus
out
was
like,
it was like, what's it here? It's Magnus.
It's Magnus the Red. Yeah. Brilliant. Absolute brilliance. And this is like before the miniature. It's only been leaked unofficially, you know?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. It was a very clever thing to do, because somebody in their social media team must have gone, crap, guys, somebody's got the Magnus box. At which point somebody went, bugger! All right, I've got an idea.
It was brilliant. It was sheer brilliance.
Yeah.
It was a way to control. It was controlling it.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, a lot of companies out there do not control any kind of leaks or react to them, and they just let them go.
Or
and
they overreact. They come down on it. It's just not the way to do it. I mean, it just doesn't work.
If you manage it, all the focus is then on you and your company and what you've done, not some guys releasing slice of artwork that he's black and whited out.
Oh, the way they are generating
in China,
excitement through their social media at the moment for their releases is masterful.
Oh yeah,
it's absolutely masterful. I mean, just look.
The intro videos and stuff are brilliant.
In the few days since the official announcement of 8, that okay, we've all known that it's coming. But since the official announcement, have you seen the forums out there? Have you seen the major rumor sites and whatnot? People are going ape.
Stay away.
They're going ape over it. They're okay. There's a bit of negativity out there, and they can all go away, quite frankly. But generally speaking, the way they've developed, they've cultivated furor over their product is so clever. It's so clever, and I think they're going to make a ridiculous amount of money.
Oh yeah,
off of this.
Which of course is what it needs to do because it's a business.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
The highlight.
But this is the way you do it.
The highlight for me has been the FAQ that they've released for it, because there is stuff that they've put into that FAQ which a business shouldn't be putting in there, because it's for all intents and purposes, an FAQ for a new release is to help get it sold. This has been more of a reassurance with some jokes.
With a lot of jokes. Yes, a lot of very self-deprecating jokes.
Exactly, and that is brilliant because you can't help but like them for it.
No, well, what it shows is their finger is on the pulse at last. It shows that they are actually aware of the cultural climate, which they haven't been for a while, up until the recent shift in dynamic. They were totally divorced from their fan base at one point and from the culture of wargaming entirely. But now it's so on the button that they even take pot shots at themselves and their own perception.
Yeah, when you go back 3 years, Games Workshop didn't actually have a Facebook presence.
I know.
How insane is that?
How lunatic is that?
In this day and age, how any I fully admit, some companies put up some terrible Facebook things. Absolutely terrible. And they get slammed for it in the comments. Usually I occasionally see wrestling ones and it's just like, oh boys, stay away. But yeah, though maybe they were like, oh, we don't want to go there, it's full of negativity. It's like, well, yeah, but if you go look and there is actually people who are very happy with it, and I think everybody I know likes the stuff that they come out. Hell, there's even a meme of Duncan the Peyton guy.
That's how you know it's gone right.
He's become a figure, hasn't he? I mean, he's essentially become part of the Games Workshop mythos now.
Well,
so
two thin coats on everything.
Duncan is now so much of a character. There are jokes for him. Like when it's cold, Duncan doesn't put on a jacket. He only wears 2 thin coats.
2 thin coats.
These are things that are actually happened, and that's brilliant.
Very pleased. Just on a personal note, the fact that the release box is going to include the new Death Guard.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, that's what the rumours are saying. Unless you've heard anything a bit more concrete.
At this point. I think it's pretty certain.
Because we're still in that news bit. There's they put up that Shadow of Chaos video, and it's like, oh hey Death Guard, oh hey bulbous flying Death Guard machine in the background, come to stew.
Kit, obviously.
Yeah.
It's funny because ever since that Death Guard video went up, I was like, I could do some Death Guard. It's not a new army; it's expanding on an existing army,
look beautiful.
which sounds better to the wife.
They really do look gorgeous. The new Death Guard.
Oh, there's the new Marines.
And nurgly cultists. Nurgly cultists. Give them to me.
I think before we move away from this, then, I think we can all say we're very positive about the way the 40k is looking. There was a map put up of the the galaxy.
Oh yes.
As it stands with the new 40k. There's a couple of interesting things in here I want to bring up. The first being, what the hell happened to the Eye of Terror?
Oh, it's gotten very big.
It must. Because I've literally got the map up. As soon as you mentioned it, I was right there. I was like, man, the Eye of Terror is right in the centre. That's not right. Oh yeah, it's this little squidgy mess up on the top left. Oh, that's just something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's expanded from the Maelstrom. Oh, that's not good.
The Eye of Terror is now a tiny part of a much bigger problem.
Yeah, I mean, this new thing is bisecting the entire sector, isn't it? The entire galaxy is now in half.
Yeah, but there's like, you go really like deep into the map, like zoom right in, and you can see these little things like the I can't remember what it's called now. It's something to do with Cadia. It's like the Cadian Tunnel or something like that. There's another one further down where it looks like there's a little bit of real space which is just almost connected but not quite, and that's got a name as well, so it looks like you can jump from real space to real space. And there's all these little things in there, and as I say, you have to really get into the map to see them. But which suggest what's going to be happening in the universe later on. Because aren't there, like, if you look closely, there are lots of new Necron dynasties sort of stirring, aren't there? There are lots of... you can see Sorciarius as well now, which is in place of Prospero. Very close to Terra. It's
very close to Terra.
Frighteningly close.
Yeah, so basically Magnus and the Thousand Sons, and Magnus and the reformed Thousand Sons, who are now a legion again, are close to Terra. They're
close enough to start flagging off Gilliman. Yay!
Hey. Always a good thing.
I like the idea. I love the idea of Magnus going, hey! Yeah, that's in character.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the notion of Magnus as a sort of football hooligan. Yeah,
you'll never go if you think you're hard enough.
Yeah, that doesn't really fit. He'd be the kind of guy who'd be like the nerd who was trying it.
Yeah.
And which isn't quite getting the
look at him, he's kicked that ball. Which is reason to cheer for some reason.
Exactly, that's exactly who Magnus would be.
It's that episode of the IT Crowd. He's got a sorcerer's book that tells him what to say in these scenarios. Oh, did you see that thing last night? Oh, it was terrible. What was he thinking?
And Sports Ball has been kicked to the other side of the Sports Ball field, and now everyone's shouting.
Which is a good thing.
That would most definitely be Magnus.
So I'm very, very, very excited for how this is going to go. Right, so we'll move off to our third and final section. Oh, sorry, our third and almost final section for the night. I forgot about the actual final section. Got a lot of editing to do in this one, and that is going to be the Fluff and Hammer facts. So we're now going to get deep into the fiction, and each of us are going to talk about a part of the fiction of one of Games Workshop's universes that we want to talk about. So we're going to start off with George.
Excellent.
Does George know what he's going to talk about?
I do, sort of. There's such a wide range of things. I mean, it is definitely going to be 40k flavoured, given the atmosphere in the game at the moment. It's got to be 40k flavoured, and considering that I'm currently reading through quite a lot of the Horus Heresy books again to get my juices flowing, as it were, it's got to be one of the Primarchs and one of the Space Marine Legions, one of them that I connect with very profoundly. It was going to be Magnus the Red and the Thousand Sons earlier, but I think that's kind of trodden ground at this point. And he's been so prominent in the background recently. I think it's a little bit too much. So I'm going to talk about my absolute favourite of the Primarchs. I'm going to talk about Fulgrim and the Emperor's Children.
Okay.
I love Fulgrim. The interesting thing about the Emperor's Children, 3rd Legion of the Space Marines, they are the Legion whose background has probably changed the most in transition from the old background to the Horus Heresy stuff. Most of the Space Marine Legions, their background hasn't been changed as such, it's just that it's been tweaked and certain things have been emphasized or explored a bit deeper. The 3rd Legion, their background has changed. It's changed quite dramatically, actually. If you look at how the 3rd Legion is represented, certainly in terms of its fall from grace, in, say, the Index Astartes articles from a decade back, the background is very, 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 very different. For one thing, in the original background, the Emperor's Children did not originally fall to chaos alongside Horus, the Death Guard, and the World Eaters.
Okay.
They actually came in later. They were one of the legions assigned to stop Horus at Istvan in the original fluff, and were actually corrupted in a parley with Horus. So they actually fell a lot later. But that has changed now. Now, in the Horus Heresy books, of course, they are one of the very first legions that Horus corrupts. One of the very first. And their path of corruption is very deep and very long and very, very complex, actually. The thing I like about the 3rd Legion and about Fulgrim... First of all, Fulgrim. the Primarch of the Emperor's Children. He is the superhuman entity who was created by the Emperor, from whose genetic template the Emperor's Children were created. And like all of the Primarchs, he represents some aspect of the Emperor himself, some aspect of the Emperor's character, and has some semblance of what I suppose you can call the Emperor's semi-divinity within him. What Fulgrim emphasizes more than anything is the Emperor's desire for self-perfection, for self-improvement, I suppose. Certainly that's originally the case before his mind is corrupted by chaos. His whole modus operandi, his philosophy was about attaining degrees of perfection in all things. So he treated everything as though it was art. Absolutely everything as though it was an art or a craft. And that is not only in terms of actual arts and crafts like painting and sculpture and whatnot, which he actually does engage in. I mean, he's actually really unusual amongst the Primarchs, as are the Emperor's Children in general, because they are one of the very few Space Marine legions that say they remained loyal. Say there was no Horus Heresy and the Great Crusade succeeded and all of humanity and all of the galaxy was united under the Imperium, and suddenly there was no conflict anymore, there was no need for it. The Emperor's Children are one of the very few Space Marine legions that would have still had some function in that world, in that universe. Where if you contrast and compare them to, say, the World Eaters, for example, after the fighting is done, they would have had to put the World Eaters down. They would have had to have been destroyed, because they would have actually just unsettled everything. They would have just turned on everyone else, because all they can do is fight. It's all they're made for. Yeah. The Emperor's Children, Fulgrim, are very different, because they have ideas and philosophies well beyond that, and even interests well beyond that. Fulgrim emphasized to his children the need to be more, to have interests beyond warfare, beyond destruction, although they did treat that as an art as well. Yeah. All of the Emperor's Children are encouraged to have other pursuits, to be sculptors, to be painters, to be poets, to be musicians, to be composers, to be all of these things. Like the Thousand Sons, like the Word Bearers, they have interests and obsessions beyond what they were initially created for. And that seems to be something that's quite common amongst the Chaos Legions, interestingly. They do all seem to have something else going on. And it seems to be that which becomes the snare by which they're corrupted. Yeah. Now... Oh, sorry, go on, Adam.
I was going to say, they are the ones who've fallen furthest from, like, Gilliman's Codex, aren't they?
Absolutely.
You know, they're the ones who didn't want to... be the Marine and only the Marine. They wanted to have something else in life. Logar, for example.
More human. Yeah, they're the more human of the Space Marines, and that's why when you encounter them in the Horus Heresy books, where before they're corrupted, they're actually the most sympathetic.
Yes, which makes their fall that much worse.
It makes it that much worse, but also that much more interesting. I mean, what I like about Fulgrim's fall is that initially it's involuntary. You know, he's actually possessed. He's corrupted by a metaphysical force, by a demon. His body is inhabited by a demon, and his consciousness is shunted out into... It becomes a sort of pastiche of the picture of Dorian Gray. And actually, Oscar Wilde references are throughout the Horus Heresy books that feature the Emperor's Children for some reason. Really? Yeah, throughout. It's really interesting. In the same way that throughout the books that feature the Word Bearers, there are numerous references to William Blake and the Romantic Poets. Numerous references.
I need to go back and reread some of these.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. There are these literary bylines that go through almost all of the books that feature the Traitor Legions in particular.
Yeah. That's really strange. I like that.
It's cool, isn't it? It's really, really cool. But what happens is, whilst this demon is corrupting, it's a demon of Slanesh, obviously. Yeah. So it is subtly subverting and twisting the Emperor's Children's philosophies and perspectives into something much darker. It's emphasizing pursuit of pleasure and pursuit of sensation, not just pleasure, but sensation in general amongst the Emperor's Children, to the point whereby all notions of undesirable sensation becomes nothing, it becomes meaningless. So there's no distinction between pain and pleasure for the Emperor's Children, or between disgrace and ascended artistic pursuits. They become open to anything and everything, and it happens quite quickly. It does. The descent of the Legion happens quite quickly. They become cyberitic, and some of the acts that are actually portrayed in the books, like Fulgrim and what's the one that comes after the Reflection Cracked and Angel Exterminatus, get really near the knuckle. Really near the knuckle. I mean, they can do a lot more in that fiction than they can in the more general background books.
Yeah.
And they just go for it. Some of the stuff that Fulgrim gets into is really really unpleasant and really dark and twisted and wonderful.
Can you give us an example of something?
I can give you an example. In the Reflection Cracked, what happens is one of Fulgrim's lieutenants, a character called Lucius, starts to suspect that Fulgrim is in fact possessed. However, this is actually after Fulgrim has expelled the demon from his body and has retaken it.
Okay.
And in order to expel the demon, a cabal of Fulgrim's highest lieutenants, which include Fabius Bile, Eidolon, and all of these sort of high-ranking Emperor's children, they actually sort of kidnap him and strap him down in a surgery of Fabius Bile's, and they try to torment the demon out of him. They try to torture the demon out of him. Of course, they don't know. They don't know that it's a demon of Slaanesh, so it wouldn't matter even if they did do that. But the things they do to his body is unbelievable, because he's a Primarch. He's a Primarch, so any injury he can almost instantaneously heal from. There's at one moment where they are blowtorching his limbs, his extremities, his fingers, his feet, and as the flesh and bone is melting, it's resculpting before their eyes. And Fulgrim is really enjoying it. Like, really enjoying it. It's becoming quite lewd. It's got a sort of Clive Barkerian quality to it. And it gets worse. It gets worse. There's an artifact which you may be aware of, which is it's an actual torture device called the Pair of Torment.
Yes. Yeah, I know about the Pair of Torment.
Do you know what that is? Do you know what that is, Stu?
No,
It's an item that was used by the Inquisition and other forces.
Well, nobody expects them.
It's a device. It's a metallic object that's shaped a little bit like a pear, and is, well, inserted into the intended victim, and then is cranked open, and the pear splits into metallic leaves and gradually tears at the person's insides until it's fully open. They do that to him, and he really enjoys it.
Good old Fabulous Bill.
He really, really, really enjoys it, because of course at this point Fulgrim enjoys everything. You can't actually do anything to him that he would not enjoy,
because it's all experience.
It's all experience. It's all what I really love about the way the Horus Heresy books in particular have expanded what Fulgrim and the Emperor's Children experience is that it's not just carnality. It's carnality as a means to something else. Fulgrim expresses this. He claims that by bringing his flesh to a focal point of absolute extremity, it allows him to operate and perceive on levels that he never could before. So by experiencing these ultimate states of pain, of torment, of pleasure and disgrace, he transcends himself. He transgresses beyond his own boundaries, his own context, and becomes something more. And that seems to be the philosophy that has bled down through the Emperor's Children, to the point whereby they have become unrecognizable as what they originally were, because they mutilate themselves. There's one of them that continually burns himself, so he is this walking cadaver of blackened flesh, because it brings him to this state of nirvana. There's another one whose face has been torn off and pinned back, so he looks like a Cenobite, essentially. There's a great scene, I believe it's in Angel Exterminatus, where something has happened to one of the Emperor's Children's ships. It's sort of blasted open, and some of the Emperor's Children are exposed to the vacuum and are dragged back on board by members of Perturabo's Iron Warriors who are travelling with them at the time. And the Iron Warriors are moving amongst them, trying to administer aid to them. but the Emperor's children are waving them away and are saying, no, let us die. This is bliss. This is a transcendent moment. Let us die. And they do, in states of absolute ecstasy.
Yikes.
And that's what the Emperor's children have effectively become. They have become this... alongside the Death Guard, I would say they have become the most corrupted of the Chaos Legions, but in a very different way. By their own hands, by surgery, by not just by mutation, but because they actually alter themselves. They rip themselves open. They surgically alter themselves so that they are more beautiful in their own perspectives, or to be more, so that they can experience more. It's gross and it's wonderful, and I love it.
The tiny steps to damnation, isn't it? The tiny steps becoming medium steps, becoming larger steps, to becoming leaps.
To the point whereby now, in the present day 40k, what were the Emperor's children don't even look like Marines anymore.
No.
They are something totally other. And they're one of the more dangerous legions as well, because they don't care. They don't care. They don't care if they die, they don't care if they live, they don't feel pain. They will do anything to experience something new.
Yeah.
Anything. So if they want to experience betrayal, or, they will murder their nearest and dearest, their closest allies. If they want to experience being turned on by their allies, then they will make it happen.
Can you imagine the sort of meeting that takes place before they drop ship down? So it's like, right, well, today I've decided I want to experience 1,000 people shitting themselves to death.
Yeah, that's exactly
so we're all just going to take these laxatives before we go down. We'll be in the middle of the fight, and the poo will start, and we'll all experience this together. Yes? Excellent.
That is exactly the kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, when in, I think it's in the book Fulgrim, actually, towards the end of the book, when envoys appear from other legions aboard Fulgrim's flag vessel, they describe scenes almost like that, where there are entire corridors coated in effluent, where there are people wandering around who have been so abused. It's unbelievable. Even to the eyes of other traitor Astartes, it's unbelievable. I mean, there are points in Angel Exterminatus where the Iron Warriors are aghast at what the Emperor's children have become. Absolutely aghast.
That's this is why I really wanted to do this podcast, because a lot of that stuff I didn't know. The sort of the sensations of it is something I did not know about, and that is brilliant.
It goes very deep.
Yeah.
It goes way beyond what I thought they would in those books. Well beyond.
Yeah.
It's
stuff
something I'd like right off the bat with the Heresy books. It was,
say again, sorry, Stu.
Here's what I'm saying, this is something I always liked from the Heresy books from the start. It was, here's something you think you know.
Yep.
Here's something that's always kind of been what you've been told about the Heresy. Yeah, all of it's BS. Because it is literally a time of myth and legends. And there's so much stuff that gets convoluted and mixed up.
Oh yeah, I mean,
and when they work with that stuff as well, like, I remember in the Index of Astartes they said very much about the Death Guard of, this is the story of Garrow, and he fled first in the Eisenstein, and he told the Emperor what was going on, but there's mixed reports about what happened to him. And I remember seeing that little chunk as I was reading the book, because as the story went on, all of the people who were with him were one of those options that was laid out as that bit of background. One became this Lord of Flies.
The Lord of Flies.
One became an apothecaries, and he became this, for a while anyway, this lone, guy fighting back against chaos. And it was just all the, like, some of the Heresy books I've just been reading. It's like I'm literally at the moment I'm reading Master of Mankind.
Oh, by the Emperor.
And all the Heresy stuff has been like, so the Emperor just kind of waited on Earth, no real reason why. He just couldn't be asked, apparently. But now I actually know why he didn't go out and go, let's go batter a Horus.
Oh, he's fighting his own war,
There's a really good reason for it. And up until the Heresy books, it's never been explained.
It hasn't, no. It's been one of the big plot holes, hasn't it? One of the big plot holes. Why didn't he just, blat Horus from afar?
So he just sat on his ass and fought his mates to do it, even though he knew half of them were all buggered over. What's going on with that? Yeah, it doesn't happen with every book. It certainly doesn't happen with every book.
No.
But every so often it just drops that thing where it's just like, Yeah, actually, this is what I...
Yeah.
Like the Alpha Legion.
Oh, God, the Alpha Legion. Jesus.
I remember putting that down and just going,
What the hell? Yeah. What the hell?
You know,
I mean,
because I can't remember. Did we have the idea of twin Primarchs at that point?
Nope. That was introduced.
So we didn't have that. We didn't have the idea that actually they were working towards what the Emperor wanted. Yeah. But going to Chaos was the best way to go about it.
Yeah, in a very convoluted way. Yeah. Absolute brilliance.
And then the one I read recently is just like, well, that answers the question of, is this character actually dead or not? Yeah, why?
Well, it's like Lorgar as well, isn't it? I mean, Lorgar's one of the big characters in the Horus Heresy books, and he has
all about
consistently surprised me all the way through because I really like him, and he is very well reasoned. I totally understand the reasons for what he does. Totally understand. Even when he's fallen to chaos, I understand what he's doing. I get it. Angron's the same. Angron was probably one of my least favourite of the Traitor Primarchs because I just find him a bit boring. You know?
Yeah.
Actually, if you read Betrayer, he's a brilliant character. He's an absolutely brilliant character. He's sympathetic. He's actually quite well reasoned when he's not frothing mad with the nails in his head. There are points when he argues with Lorgar, and he holds his own in debate.
Everybody just thinks of him as the head-down charge guy, but he's still a Primarch.
He's actually a really sad character. He's probably one of the most tragic of the Primarchs, alongside Magnus. I'd say he's probably one of the most tragic.
Yeah. It's the what if. What would have we been if he'd landed on the next planet?
He brings that up. He actually brings that up. There's a point in Betrayer where he's fighting Roboute Guilliman, right? And Guilliman is sort of snarling and calling him a traitor and blah, 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 blah. And Angron says to him, what the fuck did you expect me to be? You landed on a planet of princes and were made a prince of your own little empire. What did they do to me? They butchered me. They lobotomized me. They turned me into this frothing, mad lunatic. What did you expect? And you know what? It's like,
You make a good point there, sir.
You make an excellent point, Angron. What else could you have been? Not much. He's right. It's brilliant. I love that. I love the fact that it's giving voice to these characters. They're not just like these raving mad fanatics or lunatics or broken characters. They've got motivation, they've got complexity, and I really, really like it. The only one for me who needs really fleshing out at the moment is Mortarion. We don't really see a great deal of what Mortarion is motivated by. I would like to see a book focusing on him a bit more.
I get the feeling that we're going to see a bit more of Mortarion as time goes on.
I think we might.
They're slowly doing the Primarch series, aren't they?
They are.
Well, they're doing a book focusing purely on that Primarch. So he's bound to be the one eventually.
Oh, yeah.
Part of me is amazed that Perturabo got a book before he did. Yeah.
Oh, Perturabo. He's got some good character development in Angel Exterminatus, actually, when he's interacting with Fulgur.
It's been a while, I need to reread it.
He's got some very good character development, and he's very cool, Perturabo. He's this very rational guy. That's what he's all about. He's rationality and reason down the line, which is why he ultimately sides with Horus. It's because he thinks he's going to win. It's as simple as that. He's ran all the projections and he thinks Horus is going to win.
Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes, let's.
So we don't get... that was fascinating stuff. Thank you very much.
No worries.
I'm going to talk about a character that we have already mentioned, mostly because he is my favourite character in the entirety of the old world of Warhammer. Problem is, he's been retconned to hell and back, and no longer exists, apart from the fact that he does.
Okay.
But we'll get to that. I'm going to tell you about Drachenfels. Because I've mentioned it before. And sometimes I mention Drachenfels in conversation, and people look at me to go, who's that then?
Yeah.
And the answer is, he's the proto-Nagash. He is what the big bad of the Warhammer world was going to be before Nagash basically took his place and went off in a completely different line. Drakenfels is a monster of the utmost monstrosity, whilst Nagash is a creature that is a corruption of his own being. Nagash wanted to be this immortal, powerful thing, which then lent him to become the more powerful thing, but he wanted to be more powerful, more immortal, which then led him to be a god, and it's all that type of thing. He wanted to be a chaos god. He ate a chaos god. Just let that sink in. Drakenfels, however, I still think is a nastier piece of work than Nagash, who ate a chaos god. Because Nagash, now the problem here is trying to give you the idea of what Nagash is involves you to get rid of everything that you know about the Warhammer world and go back to the late 80s Warhammer world. Because he is a Neanderthal, to start with, 15,000 years before the arrival of the Old Ones, the Slan. Now, as what we know of the Warhammer world is that there were never any Neanderthals. The Old Ones made all the races on the Earth, or stole them from other places, depending on which version of Warhammer you're going to look at. So you've got to remember, this is before all of that. He wandered around for a little while, became sick, was getting older. He was left out by his tribe in the wilderness to die. He then pretended to die. When one of his tribe came close, he hit him with a rock. Took all of his energy. There's no chaos here. Remember? There is no realm of chaos yet. He absorbed his life energy without chaos being there. So, he then stole the guy's power, stole his body, and then wandered around going, do, I've got a brand new body. Oh, this one's starting to wear out as well. 60, 70 years down the line. So he hits somebody else with another rock. Gets their body. 20,000 years of hitting people with rocks and taking their body later. He starts going, right, this isn't kind of working. Civilization is growing around me. Sigmar is, he's over there doing his things with goblins, so I'm going to build him a castle. And he does. He builds this giant castle, and he fills it with all sorts of horrors. Then the warp gates collapse, and the chaos gods come into the world, and he goes, right, here, I want to tribute demons from you lot. And the chaos gods go, what? And he goes, yeah, I want you to give me tribute. And the chaos gods go, you're alright, come on, come closer, let's see what you've got. So he goes into the war. He goes into the realm of chaos. There's no real tale of what he does in there, but he comes out, and the chaos gods start paying him tribute. Drakenfels beat up Khorne. I want you to think of that. This is...
Wow.
He beat a man to death with a rock and stole his energy before magic existed. He goes into the war, into the realm of chaos, beats up the chaos gods, and they start paying him tribute. Right? So what does he do with all of this power? Does he get some goal, some idea? Like, does he want to take over the world? Does he want to destroy the Empire? Does he want to kill Sigmar? Does he want to absorb the powers of chaos? No, he doesn't. He builds his castle. He invites people around to tea. Sometimes he removes all of their skin and brings in their own children to eat. When he does build an army, it's because he hasn't done anything for a couple of 100 years and is a little bit bored. Does he care that he wins? Not really, no. He, slaves come back with him, which he'll either turn into, as I say, slaves, or he'll torture, or, he'll do all sorts of horrible things before consuming their souls and becoming more powerful, keeping them in zoos for a little while so he has to use their flesh just in case he ever needs it. Because at this point in time, Drakenfels is no longer absorbing entire... He isn't putting himself into bodies. He's melding different bodies together and then forging the flesh into something that he wants to look like.
Right.
So at this point in time, he's about 10 foot tall and wearing more clothes than the average haberdashery. He is gigantic, and his castle looks really nice. Because he doesn't stop building the bloody thing. So at this point in time, he's removed a mountain to build his castle. It's that big. So Sigmar unites the tribes. Goes off, defeats the Greenskins, makes the alliance with the dwarfs, and coming back from that, he runs into Drakenfels, and Drakenfels is like, come on then, let's see what you've got. Sigmar, basically, for all intents and purposes, hits him with a rock. Kills him. Right? Sigmar is like, right, well, you're done. That's it. Drakenfels, however, cannot be killed like that, so he regenerates his body in his giant castle over the next 1,000 years. Now, if you remove the castle to the word, like, take the word castle out and remove it with Cripple Peak, does that sound familiar?
It sounds very familiar.
Yeah. So, yeah, as I say, Proto-Nagash.
Yeah.
When he reappears again, he gets an army of demons, tribute from the gods of chaos. He raises a massive army of the undead, walks right through the Wood Elf civilization of Athelorian, attacks a Bretonnian province, and there he destroys everything. Right? Absolutely everything. He takes everything away from it, and then from the sort of the poor people who are left, he just says, right, I want all of your wealth in tribute. When he is given it, he executes most of them as well.
Of course.
However, he leaves a few people alive. One of those people was the father of Genevieve de la Diodène. So, Genevieve is a vampire character who later on turns up in a lot of books. This is important later. So, about 60 years or so after he's just destroyed this Bretonnian province for absolutely no reason whatsoever, he goes up to the Empire without no army, no weapons. He just goes up, he goes to, the elected counts and says, I've renounced my evil ways, I'm sorry, I've reformed, I have been a horrible, horrible creature, I will be an ally to you. He, for the next 20, 30 years, he puts out this elaborate PR campaign of, using the wealth he'd stolen to pay reparations to victims that had escaped his castle, to plead for forgiveness at the graves of those who, families of people he'd killed. He puts this money that he's taken from all these different places into all these poor areas of the Empire. This takes like 30 years. All these high-level officials go, right, he must have done it then. He's become good. So he invites the entire court of the Emperor to feast at his castle.
Oh. He
then serves them wine that paralyzes them, laid an elaborate feast of all of their children. I apologise for laughing, but it's just like, this is evil beyond belief. And then it's the idea of like a 6-year-old with an apple in its mouth. It just makes me laugh. So they're all there. So all of the children are there, and they're being eaten by goblins and whatnot. One of the elected counts is killed by centimetres. By that I mean he sits there and for the next 4 days just slices a centimetre at a time off him. He is brilliantly evil. He sits there and at one point nonchalantly, just happily sits there and eats the food as the paralysed nobles starve to death with the food right in front of them. Good God!
Yeah,
you are fantastic. You go flash forward another 60 years or so, 70 years. You then have a hero named Oswald von Königswald, who is a elected count. He basically builds an RPG army. So he has Genevieve with him. He gets a load of other adventurers to go with him, and they all go to Castle Drakenfels to put the monster down for good. People die along the way. Oswald, by himself, says he kills Drakenfels. His death destroys the undead and demons in his service. All the demons are banished back to the warp. All the skeletons that are attacking places crumble to dust. All the greenskins flee. There is nothing left. Right? The fortress is sitting, and Oswald now owns it. Problem was, Oswald didn't kill Drakenfels, because Oswald von Königswald is a massive, massive coward. He actually shits himself when Drakenfels decides to come after him. So Drakenfels just goes, right, let's make a deal. So, you kill me, and then you gain a load of power. People come to you, you are the hero, and then you can aim to get into a position to overthrow Karl Franz. I'll just sit here and I'll just regenerate over time. So he lets Oswald kill him. All of his servants die by Drakenfel's hand and lays low until much, much later on. Enter Genevieve and Detlef. Deltef. These names are so hard to say at times. The sort of the 80s old world. Detlef is a playwright. He is basically Warhammer Shakespeare, right? he is in a debtor's prison, and Oswald comes to him to say, I want you to tell the story of the death of Drachenfels. And this is where this is the point where the book Drachenfels starts. I just want to point that out. This is the point where Drachenfels begins.
Wow! So there's all of this sort of back mythology.
Yeah, and I've jumped over it. Yeah, I haven't gone into depth with some of this stuff. I just want you to know how much I fucking love Drachenfels. So Dietlif, he does the play and everything. They all go out. Lots of weird haunted things happen because they want to play. They want to have the play at Castle Drachenfels. There is the guy who they want to play Drachenfels is this giant, great big guy, who he himself is a acolyte of Drachenfels. Right? Drachenfels over the years has been teaching him various small magics for him to become this great actor. And he thinks that Drachenfels is like a magic patron who doesn't want to be uncovered. But when he gets to the point where he's having to suck the fat out of somebody in order that's the point where he starts going, this isn't quite right. So Drachenfels takes over his body. During the play being put together, Drachenfels works his way around and kills all of the original adventurers. He takes the bones from one, the flesh from another, the eyes from another. It's the Mummy story for all intents and purposes. In order to regain himself. And during the play, when the guy playing Drachenfels is meant to come out and let Oswald, Oswald's meant to kill him, he just goes, "Bata! I am Drachenfels! Rah!" And everybody absolutely cacks themselves. Until Detlef, the playwright, who was in a debtor's prison, who is not in great shape, kills Drachenfels by hitting him with a rock. Granted, it's in his mind he sees it as the Hammer of Sigmar.
Right.
It's
a rock.
It's just a rock. And the cool thing is that Drachenfels, in his last moments, because he's been struck down by the power of Sigmar as such, he has this moment where he flashes back to that original moment where he killed his first victim. And you get a page that is just basically, how long have I managed to live? 30,000 years. It's just a blink. It's not enough time. And that, I always think, it's at the very, very end, he was still just greedy for more life.
Yeah.
The castle was razed to the ground after 5 weeks of destroying it. But he is absolutely fantastic because he is just insanely evil. No, insane's the wrong word. He is not insane. He is measured. He is very pleasant to talk to. He never threatens. He doesn't do the there's none of the monstrosity. It's all of his actions are monstrous. His voice,
he's sort of almost like Hannibal Lecter. He's got that quality about him.
He actually seems to be like a really nice guy to talk to as long as he's not bored.
Oh, so as long as you keep him entertained, you're okay.
Yeah, I mean, there was an RPG book for Warhammer Fantasy Battle put out. Apart from that, he's never had any rules in Fantasy Battle, which is a bit of a shame, because he would be fantastic. However, he would probably put Nagash quite low down the list because he's so ridiculously powerful. The only times he's ever been brought up again is in the End Times, the Vermintide game that came out for PC, where they talk about going into Castle Drachenfels, right? As you're playing through it, it's got the Poisoned Feast. So that's still there.
Oh, that's a very cool little reference.
Yeah, nothing else, just that. That's really good. The other time is when the End Times was taking place. So they released a new version of Drachenfels. Well, not a new version, but it had a new cover and all that type of thing. Black Library released it. And then there is a mention as the Nameless being brought up as a Mortarch of Nagash. Right? Now, what seems to happen is he's described as a bodiless spirit that specialises in possessing and controlling large groups of people at a time. He also likes to screw people over for his petty whims. Sound familiar? When he puts up banners of flayed skin, his victims start skinning each other. And then the next day, he makes them rip out their bones to make totems because he's bored with the skin banners. This is sounding very familiar. There's a point where he basically steals Vlad von Karstein's army and makes them kill each other for his own amusement. Karstein is not best pleased.
No, I can imagine he's not.
Yeah. And so he is still about, kind of?
Sort of. In the background rather than as a playable entity. But
what I've actually done is I've built an undead death rattle army that has Drachenfels as a necromancer lord.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an idea I had way back in the 90s. And the thing is entirely hand sculpted with a couple of like Citadel miniature parts thrown in, but the body is entirely hand sculpted. And now I look at it and just go, that just doesn't have enough dickishness to it. Because that seems to be the thing with Drachenfels is a ginormous dick. And I love him to bits. So yeah, that's the character I wanted to talk about.
Superb. You know, I did not know a lot about him until then, but I consider myself educated now. Brilliance.
He's so good.
Brilliance.
All right, Stu, I do believe you've got one as well.
I'm going to go for something which is... It says a lot about how I collected armies and what armies I would decide on. I tend to look for those... Well, this is predominantly 40k. Those armies, those marine chapters, those chaos legions, which are overlooked by everybody else. There is a really good reason why I had almost 10,000 points of Iron Warriors. Part of that is Storm of Iron. Part of that is because nobody else did them. So yeah, I'm always a sucker for the little guy that doesn't get a chance. And an extension of that is whenever. There have been moments when a new Marine Codex comes out and instantly it's like, alright, which founding chapters should people do? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no. Second founding. Second founder afterwards. Do somebody who isn't well known. And under that, I'm going to bring attention. This is one of the ones that's a little bit more well known, but it's one of the ones that's close to my heart. And someday I hope to actually do a full army of them, but we'll see. Is the Flesh Terror.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So... Basically, the Flesh Terrors are a second founding chapter of the Blood Angels, and it seemed to be that all of the ones that were a bit crazier than the rest and a bit angrier than the rest got all dumped on the Flesh Terrors.
As you do.
Basically, as we've sort of learned from the Heresy books, there was an actual character known as the Flesh Terror, who was their first chapter master, who was basically just known for his bluntness and his honesty. Which kind of plays into the chapter itself, because they are blunt. They're just a little crazy at times. It's one of those ones that I always feel it's like worth drawing attention to, because so much of the sort of 40k world and so much of the Imperium's image of Space Marines is they're the best.
Yeah.
They're the Emperor's Angels. They're not going to do anything terrible. And if they do, well, there must be them horrible Chaos ones that we're not meant to talk about. Whereas the Flesh Terrors...
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, but then nobody knows about that. Shh. You're not meant to tell anybody. Shh. Whereas the Flesh Terrors have that reputation of, don't get too close. There's been at least one well-known incident of them attacking civilians that they're supposed to be defending.
Yeah.
And the people that they're fighting with, because they can't control that rage.
They're just that close to being chaos, aren't they? They're that close to falling. They're also, compared to the rest of the chapters out there, they're also very undermanned, because there's so many that fall to the Black Rage, and their casualty attrition is just horrendous, because they are all about getting down the enemy's throat. There's no Codex approved battle line. Oh, the big book says we've got to do this. No, it's is that in there? Go get him. And I do like the fact now as well, because way back when there wasn't even any characters for these guys. The best we got was when the Index Astartes article came out. They're like, well, this is Seth, he's the chapter master, he's trying to make things better, but we didn't get much more than that. And I believe there was a chaplain as well, but there was literally just text boxes giving us a tiny bit of blurb. Whereas now, as they've expanded on it, we've got more details for Seth, who's trying his best to make them look better.
he's trying his best to save his chapter instead of just going, yeah, we'll just chuck it all down, chuck it away at something. Rah rah, rage go rage. And it's one of those ones that I kind of like having that bit extra background with it. I like the Blood Angels as it is, this tragic imagery of no matter how hard you try, all it takes is one wrong thing and then suddenly you're knee deep in black rage. And as much as Mephiston's sitting there going, well, I made it, it's right, not all of them are going to do that. And then you add on to the fact that it's, the flesh tearers are more susceptible to it. There's not that many of them as it is. It's kind of got that tragedy to them.
Yeah, they're on the brink of being dissolved, aren't they, essentially?
Well, from what I last read, it's basically they're around 400 members at most.
Oh, Jesus.
So tiny chapter.
That's 4 companies. There's 6 companies short of everybody else. The 4 companies. There are only 4 companies, maybe even less at this point. Various imperial institutions will either not work with them or want to see them destroyed, because of the civilian incidents, shall we say. But a lot of Seth's work has been towards that. He's purposely aiming his troops towards bits where there's nobody else around and nobody else to get chewed up, shall we say, and as they go crazy. But yeah, I've always kind of liked that kind of tragedy to them, that they're trying their best, but they might not be able to overcome what makes them who they are, is also the thing that's going to destroy them.
They've got a very similar flavour to a lot of the renegade chapters that come later before they fall, haven't they? They've got that feeling about them. They're so borderline, and honestly, as the storyline progresses, it wouldn't surprise me down the line. Maybe that's what happens. It'd be a shame, and it'd have to be after they killed Seth. Oh yeah,
that's for sure. But yeah, no, it's. And that colour scheme as well. There's something about that
deep sort of vermilion red. Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it?
It's just like gore, and then the black shoulder pads helmet, and it really stands out as well with so many chapters just being a solid block of colour. It doesn't feel like there's a lot where there's the shoulder pads different. It's really nice.
Isn't there something cannibalistic associated with the flesh tearers as well?
No, that I can remember.
Or some of the other chapters.
I'm sure. I seem to remember hearing something about the feast at some point, but I can't remember it off the top of my head.
I'm intrigued now.
I'm sitting here looking at the wiki page trying to speed read it. But yeah, it's I'm sure there was something about it, because they recruit only from one planet, and it's all primordial humans fighting against giant insects and creatures and stuff.
Footy cake.
So they start angry and then get angrier as time goes on.
You're right, fella. You've spent the last 10 years beating up animals that are trying to eat your face and your family's faces. Do you want to come join us and eat some other people's faces?
Do you think there's a saying, don't get angry, get angron?
No, because that'd be... Don't get angry, get a chain axe.
I mean, that has got to be the ultimate bloodbath, hasn't it? When you have world eaters on one side and flesh tearers on the other. That must be incredible.
Just 2 giant fists smashing against each other, and then one of them comes out and goes, I can take one more punch, and that's it. It's messy. And I do like how they've sort of... A lot of the second... any of the second Dark Angel, second founding Dark Angel guys, have they done anything with those apart from go, you can put them this way?
Whereas not really. There's not that many that are that distinct.
Whereas with your Crimson Fists, your Flesh Tearers, I'm trying to think if there's any
Black
others.
Templars.
But the Templars is very much Templars. They've got their own distinctiveness, their own character.
Yeah.
And they've actually pulled them to the front in the stories. A lot of the Blood Angel books, and certainly from what I've read later, as of late, feature Seth predominantly, feature Flesh Tearers.
Yeah,
because all the Sons of Sanguinius are bundling together to go, we're getting eaten by insects.
Every time you say Seth, I just start thinking of that guy from Emmerdale in a power suit.
massive chainsaw. Well, look at my moustache and me ferrets doing me pants.
Well, I say, death to the heretic.
But yeah, I think that's all I'm going to say about him. Really, just if you are thinking about doing Space Marines or Chaos Marines, don't always just go for the founding guys, the original 18. Have a look at some of the second founding chapters. Yeah. Have a look at some of the thirds, the fourths,
absolutely.
The crazy ones.
Or some of the offshoots of the. If you're going for like a traitor legion, go for an offshoot. There are lots of them.
Yeah.
There aren't just like solid blocks. There aren't just like Iron Warriors, and there aren't just Alpha Legion. They've splintered into all manner of different like subcults and sub armies that all have their own color schemes and philosophies and it's fun. It's fun to explore.
And I say that fully as the dude who's collecting Night Lords at the moment.
What's the name of the? Sorry, what's the name of the ones that split off from the Ultramarines that have like just the?
Oh, you mean the Mortifactors?
That's the one.
Where it's all about, oh yeah, this is our house. It's built from the skulls of the people who were in the chapter before.
Yeah, the Mortificators. Yeah, it's all bones and skulls, and they're very morbid. The Mortificators.
I love them to bits.
I remember years ago when I worked at Games Workshop, Colin, who worked there, who had more jobs than sense. He was a fireman, and he worked at Workshop, and he worked at a pub, and he had some other job as well. It was madness. He had a giant Mortifactors army.
Really?
And when that book came out, he was like, I'm going to do a Marine army. And he looked at the colour schemes and went, I like that, I'm going to do that. And we didn't have any background for him at all. And then that book came out and we were just like, Colin. He was like, yep, that's fine. Because Colin also had a massive undead army as well. So he was just like, yep, that's fine.
Perfect. I always wondered, are they what the Legion of the Damned eventually became?
No. The Legion of Damned is something completely separate.
The Legion of the
Damned. I'm sure that the rumour was the Firehawks.
What they are.
Yeah.
But the Mortificators are a separate chapter. In fact, the Mortificators, weren't they almost decimated?
Possibly.
No, that's to everyone's favourite squat eaters.
That's what we're calling them now. We're not calling them Tyranids, they're squat eaters. Which sounds horrible.
It does, actually, yeah.
Eating squat. Right, so we're going to finish this off then with a little quiz.
Oh, yes, hitters.
Yes, so the theme for this quiz is Gods of the Old World.
Okay.
Oh, I'm doomed.
Are you ready?
Not really.
Excellent. We're going to start off with dwarfs.
Oh.
Sorry, there aren't that many questions, don't worry. Who... By the way, you have to say ding before answering so I know who it is.
Okay.
Who was the dwarf god of smithing, mining and forging?
No idea.
It's you?
Resisting the urge to Google it. No, I have no idea, mate, I'll be honest.
Okay, it's Grungy.
Okay. You know what? That is the only name of the dwarf gods I did know, and that's the only one that sprang to mind. So I should have just said that, shouldn't I?
You should have. You should always try. never. A teacher said this to me years ago in German class. Always put something down, even if it's not right. At least you've put something in, and who knows? It could be correct. If you don't try,
it could be terribly offensive.
You don't get it. It could be, but at least you've put something.
It's alright, we've started easy, so this is going to get good. Who replaced him? Anybody can answer. Anybody can answer. Who replaced Grungy in
as the god of?
Yep.
Right.
Big Jim John. I don't bloody know.
I'm going to say David the Gnome.
You're both incorrect. It is Gotrek.
What, from the Gotrek and Felix?
Really?
Yep. Gotrikson became the dwarf god of smithing.
Okay.
And weapon making.
Okay, that makes sense, because didn't they say he was an engineer before?
Yep. And then to stay with the dwarfs slightly, what is the name of the lesser chaos god who converted dwarfs to chaos?
This would be who the chaos dwarfs worship, yeah?
Yep.
Hashut.
Yes, correct.
Whee.
And for a bonus question, who is Hashut in a different mythology?
Is he one of the ancient Egyptian gods?
He is kind of, but there's a certain author I'm looking for.
Oh.
No idea.
Oh, are we talking Lovecraft?
We are indeed.
Yes, of course we are. Yes.
Right, can you name the Ogre god? I'm going to give you...
The Great Maw?
Yes, there you go, Stu.
Hey, I remember that one.
Who worships Kahala Menshur Cain?
The Eldar.
It's the the elves.
And the elves.
And predominantly more the dark elves.
What did you say there, George?
I said the Eldar.
Yes, it is the elves and Eldar.
The bloody-handed god.
Yep, because Kayla Mensher Kane is actually, for all intents and purposes, in both fictions, all the elves worship him, as do the Eldar, as the god of murder, because he is a form of corn. Can you name the human god of death?
Oh, I should know this. That's kind of bugging me, because I should know that. I know I've heard it.
I do know it, but I can't think of it offhand.
I'll take either the name or the nickname that he is often given.
Nickname?
I can't give you either.
I might have to start making these a bit easier. It is Moor.
Maybe. That's the one.
Also
because it's the gardens of Moor.
Of course.
Also known as the Raven. And the final question. You know, I said this started hard and they started easy and got harder. Yeah. Who is the minor chaos god who has been retconned and vanished due to a legal battle between Games Workshop and the writers of the comic Caleb Dark?
Malal.
Oh, well done.
That would be Malal.
Yep. Well, George, you have won this one.
Fixed.
So what do I get, like a bag of Skittles or something?
No. Your prize is you've got to come up with a quiz for the next episode.
Oh, that's going to be fun. Brilliant. I look forward to that. I'll delve deep and try and find something really fun.
Excellent. Yeah, I look forward to it. So, with that being said, we're hitting we've passed the 2 hour mark now, so...
Yes, we've done well this evening.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So, quite simply to say, our guest, Stu, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, no, thank you for having me.
Would you like to pimp anything out before we get moving?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, and on DeviantArt, all under Dark Ages. That's spelled Dark Age and then is, because I didn't spell it correctly and it's kind of stuck.
Love it.
Obviously, you can also find me on the other Old Horse podcast that is Welcome to Kimia. Comes out every Monday. Talk about Transformers news. It's me and Mr. Tricky, who has beautiful eyes.
He does. That's true.
And yeah, that's out on a weekend. Obviously, you can find that on the same feed that you found this, as well as all the other shows on the Old Oil House, which if you wish to support and try and help us to make it better, you can go to patreon.com/the Old Oil House and help us make a better show for everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much. And George, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. My absolute pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk about this stuff.
Oh, yes, that it is. Is there anything that you'd like to pimp out, sir?
Yeah, I suppose. You can find my work, my stories at strangeplaygrounds.com and on the Twitter feed Enigmatic Elegy. Sometimes...
Did you change that because I got it right?
No, I can't remember why I changed it now. I cannot remember why I changed it, but I didn't want to call it Exaggerated Elegy. You know what it is? I think it's because everybody kept spelling Exaggerated Elegy wrong.
Ah, right.
Or just can't pronounce it. Yeah. I've run into so many people who can't pronounce it.
Because I remember saying it and you just going, you said it right.
You said it right, yes. Damn you. Damn you.
Right, I'm changing my Twitter name right now.
It was specifically designed so that people don't get it right. But yes. And you can also find various videos and things that I put up on the YouTube channel Exaggerated Elegy.
There it is. Thank you very much. And myself, you can find my first set of work at www.youtube.com/user/Grufflock, where I am doing a ton of Warhammer fiction as audiobooks. I've also started branching out to deal with other such things, and I'm going to do some StarCraft fiction in the not too distant future. Possibly some Warcraft as well. I've also got some other bits and bobs on there that are public domain, so loads and loads of audiobook readings. Please become a Patreon to me as well, because I am currently unemployed and need money to fuel my Games Workshop habit. Nobody heard that. We're safe. You can also find another project of mine, rivetedsound.co.uk, which is my audiobook production company. At the moment, we actually have Mr. George doing a series of guest reader spots for us, which will all be on the Riveted Sounds YouTube and on the website. Outside of that, there is also my other project. I retired, which is The Creeks, where myself and James and Chris start to look at mythology and monsters and cryptids and all that type of thing. We're actually recording these episodes quite far in advance. The first one's out now. The second one, which will be Ghosts, will be out at the end of this month. And tomorrow we're actually recording a very long show on Skinwalker Ranch, which will be episode 5, I think. So that's everything that I've been doing. I'm an idiot. It's simple as. So with all that being...
He's retired,
it's official,
everybody.
ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here from the horse's mouth. Cannot be denied because it's going to be on the internet.
Why do I do this to myself? I left 2 shows and started 2. So all that being said, thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been enjoyable for you. It has been a great amount of fun for us. So with that being said, good night, guys.
Goodbye, guys.
Goodbye.
Guns might be that way. Let's go the other way.
Here we go!